Well, extraordinary scenes in Parliament a little bit earlier on today. I was actually on air with Julia Hartley-Brewer at around this time, what would have been now 3 hours ago, when Prime Minister's Questions was happening, and Rachel Reeves, sitting to the left of Keir Starmer on the green benches, was seen basically crying. I mean, I don't think there's any doubt now that she was crying. The question why she was crying is one that has not been totally resolved yet, but she was clearly very, very upset. There are questions perhaps about her future. She's now in a position where she will almost certainly have to put up taxes in the autumn. Let's speak to Martina Bett, who is political correspondent for The Sun. Martina, we'll talk to you in a second about your front page exclusive about 20,000 small boat migrants and the fact that French cops have been given millions of cash for planes, 4x4s and drones, yet still failing to stop the migrant boats. Let's talk about Rachel Reeves first. An extraordinary Prime Minister's Question time. Martina, what do you make of it, and what are you hearing about the real reasons behind this?
It was absolutely extraordinary, and I was in the chamber, and there was no doubt that Rachel Reeves was weeping. She kept wiping tears off. This wasn't just her being upset for a few minutes. It lasted for the entirety of the PMQs, and she was obviously sitting next to the Prime Minister, broadcasting millions of viewers around the country, around the world. As you say, the reasons why she was crying are not entirely clear. Of course, her office is saying that it's a personal matter. But, as journalists, when, something sensitive happened to the Prime Minister or a minister, we get told on background more or less what has happened. But this is not the case. And as you said earlier, rumours are flying around because it's not yet clear why she was so upset. There have been reports that she might have had an altercation with the Speaker. This is due to basically the Speaker not being happy with the length of the answers at Treasury questions yesterday. And apparently just before PMQs, she had another word, the Speaker had another word with the Chancellor, and that set her off basically. But, lots of contrasting accounts of what has happened, and I think they're probably going to have to explain it because, the pound has tumbled, the markets are not happy. Of course, everyone was concerned that her position was not, we didn't know whether maybe she was about to resign.
Emotions are running high in Parliament. I just want to take a little look at what one Labour backbencher said last night. This was during the debate on the welfare bill. Ian Lavery, very much of the left of Labour, a former miner himself, he's been an MP for Labour since 2010. This is what he said. He was exasperated, as many of Labour MPs, both those who rebelled and didn't, were about this bill. Let's see what Ian Lavery had to say.
I've never once seen a massive commitment given in a bill like my honourable friend, right honourable friend, the Minister gave in an intervention, in a contribution. This is crazy, man. This is outrageous, man. This bill isn't fit for purpose. If you have a look, it's 16 pages. I can ask the right honourable gentleman to rip the ones out now. That's changed. There would only be 2 pages left. Withdraw the bill. I think if we had another hour or two, we could have voted on something which we all would have agreed with, instead of this hodgepodge of a bill which means nothing to nobody.
Well, that's Ian Lavery, one of the Labour MPs, very, very upset and annoyed about that. It was only a week ago that Keir Starmer said this was just noises off. He was at NATO last week. Let's have a look at that clip, actually. He was at NATO this day last week and said, it's actually not that big a deal.
So I'm comfortable with reading the room and delivering the change the country needs. We've got a strong Labour government with a huge majority to deliver on our manifesto commitments, and that's the work that we did over many years to win the election. Now we start the work over many years to change the country. Having changed the party, we now change the country. And is it tough going? Are there plenty of people and noises off? Yes, of course. There always are, there always have been, there always will be. But the important thing is to focus on the change that we want to bring about.
I'm sure Keir Starmer regretting those words, because in the 168 hours or so since he made them last week, Martina, an awful lot has happened.
Absolutely. And, I was there and NATO as well. And people around the Prime Minister were saying, this man is not for turning when it comes to welfare. And actually speaking to people in government a few months ago, they were actually saying that the measures in the original package that has been watered down several times now was not radical enough. That was not going to, we are projected to spend 100 billion by 2030 on disability benefits. And they were saying those 5 billion cuts were not going to scratch the surface of how much they needed to do. And now look at the bill. I mean, I'm surprised they even voted on it in the end yesterday, because there's nothing in it that is going to save money. And that's why Rachel Reeves crying in the House of Commons today is particularly significant, because it comes on the back of one of the most humiliating days for the Prime Minister, and now she's got to find another 5 billion plans. So the fact that she might be the one that is going to raise tax in the autumn budget is probably not going to it's probably not bringing a smile on her face.
Well, what you say is absolutely correct, because the bill is actually called the Universal Credit and Personal Independence Payment Bill, but there's nothing in it now about personal independence payment at all.
I know, absolutely. And we know that actually it's PIP that it's a problem in this country, that almost 1,000 people are signing on to PIP every single day. That's almost the entire city of Leicester. And it's just not sustainable to spend that much on PIP when, we've got, I think Labour government really needs to be clear. And this is something that other Labour MPs, not the ones that were not supportive of the bill, but have been telling me, that the fact that the Labour government needs to be clear about what sort of government it wants to be, because we cannot afford everything. We've got an old population. We've, of course, got to keep the triple lock to support our pensioners. We can't have the welfare state so generous as it is now, because as the Prime Minister said a couple of weeks ago, it's just not sustainable.
Liz Kendall kind of came out fighting. She gave quite a bombastic interview to the BBC political editor Chris Mason. Let's have a little bit of a look at this. I thought she might have wanted to kind of swing for him at one stage. It was definitely very impassioned. This is what Liz Kendall, she is the Work and Pension Secretary, the Minister, Cabinet Minister, of course, behind all this. This is what she said to the BBC last night.
Welfare reform is always difficult because it touches on the lives of millions of people. But we need to make changes because too many people have been written off, are left to a life on benefits when being in good work is so important.
How would you describe the Prime Minister's authority tonight?
I think people are 100% behind a Prime Minister who secured the first Labour government in 14 years. They know they were elected.
Him over and over again.
They were elected on a mandate for change. There are definitely lessons to learn from this process. I certainly will do that, and I'm sure my colleagues will too.
Liz Kendall there, the Work and Pension Secretary, 100% behind the Prime Minister, Martina?
I mean, it was just embarrassing. Liz Kendall was at a dispatch box. Of course, the debate started, I think, around 2 p.m. yesterday. And by the end of it, they had to use them. So she was at a dispatch box defending this bill. And like a few hours later, it was a completely different package, right? So it's very hard to see how her position now is, is not under scrutiny. And people would be wondering why she's still in post.
Martina, I just want to talk about your splash on the front page of The Sun today. This is buggy, useless French kit paid for by UK, but cops do not stop the boats. These are French police officers parading around in a buggy paid for by the UK as dinghy migrants set sail. We're giving them £500 million a year, but as this photograph and your reporting reveals very, very starkly, they're probably not worth the paper they're printed on, unlike The Sun.
Yeah, and we had Nigel Farage telling us that the French beaches are the most expensive civ. And, we've got these pictures of French cops all kitted out in gear, in all tech that British taxpayer pay for. And these, those pictures came at the same time as we had, almost the total of this year brought to a staggering 20,400 people, migrants that have crossed the channel. Crossings are, I think, 50% higher than at this point last year and nearly double 2023 levels. So this is not a government that is getting grip on this crisis, something needs to be done. We had Cabinet Minister Pat McFadden earlier this morning saying that ministers do need to work harder. But then when asked if he could guarantee the numbers would be reduced, he just couldn't say that. He just said, numbers are unacceptable, but he couldn't bring himself to promise that numbers will reduce. And number 10 yesterday, during the lobby briefing, I asked the Prime Minister's spokesman what he thought about the crossings, and he just said, well, we just can't put a date on it. We can't tell you when those numbers will reduce, because guess what? Smashing the gangs is not that easy. Yeah, well, and I mean, and clearly not a policy that's currently working. Just one other thing you wrote about. You're a very busy bee yesterday. Another story that you've written about: 4 in 10 babies born in Britain had at least one foreign-born parent as well. Yeah, that's right. And I think at a time where our readers and people across the country are worried about public services coming under strain, that's quite a significant story. And I think the figures show that in the City of London, I think that's the highest rate. 85% of new babies are born from at least one foreign parent. So it's quite stark statistics that show that actually, those are driven by migration purely.
Martina, we've just had something sent to us by a reliable source. This is someone who has sent me a 9-second video. It's going around Twitter, but it is a reliable source. This is about Bob Villan, and it was last week. I wonder if last month. I wonder if we just get your reaction to it. Sorry to put you on the spot. Originally, the Pascal Robinson Foster from Bob Villan said that when he was talking about death to the IDF, it originally meant dismantling the IDF. But actually, we have this. It's just a very short clip from last month about what Pascal Robinson Foster and Bob Villan, his band, had said. Let's play this. We've just received this.
Death to every single IDF soldier out there as an agent of terror for Israel. Death to the IDF.
So death to every IDF soldier. This was last month. They were playing at Glastonbury. Tim Davie, the Director General of the BBC, they should have done their due diligence, shouldn't they, Martina?
Absolutely, they should have. And just the fact that Tim Davie was at Glastonbury when those chants were made is just incredible. The Prime Minister was asked yesterday if he had confidence in Tim Davie, and he said yes. But, there's lots of questions about why that was allowed to happen. And what you played just now is incredibly problematic.
Martina, thank you for joining us. That's Martina Bett, who's political correspondent of The Sun.